All right, time again for some viewer questions. I really love the set of questions we're going to do today. I just pre-read a few of them and great questions, a lot of variety here. So I do read your questions, comments under my videos. I can't answer them all. I answer as many as I can. I answer the ones that I think are either reasonably original or poignant and clear or just on a whim. But I do my best. And if you are a paid channel member at the member level or above, I do prioritize those, although those aren't the only comments I answer. So yeah, thanks again for your engagement. You're watching the videos and taking the time to actually formulate questions. It helps me to know what you're interested in hearing and so forth. So let's get started. Let's see. First question is from Sheila Alex. Really enjoyed the layers and levels of your journey and how the Dharma continues to play out. Don't underestimate the value of sharing your personal story. We all find our points of reference fun and helpful. This is from a video called Why I Didn't Talk About Awakening for 15 years. Yeah, you don't have to sell me on that. Not that you're trying to sell me, but I that's a point that is very, very dear to my heart. That the sharing of a personal story is very, very profound and powerful. It's one of the reasons actually that I think a kind of like singular Neo-Advaita type message isn't always helpful, because it's like, there's no person, there's no one. Well, that's fine. There's a truth to that. And there's a way of pointing that works through that, but that's not what woke me up. That's not what made all these shifts happen for me. It was reading stories in the book called 3 Pillars of Zen. And these were very specific stories about people going through the shift, the Kensho shift, the awakening shift. And they were unmistakable. They were very, very potent descriptions in lay people's terms. Even though they were written in the 60s, like I felt what was happening. It transmitted very powerfully to me in a way that reading about Buddhism in the past hadn't, reading about Enlightenment, like none of that stuff really registered as a possibility for me to address my own suffering right now, and even to point directly to what my suffering was, and that it wasn't real in a way. It wasn't what I thought it was, that I was misperceiving reality in a big way. That message came through very strong in reading people's personal subjective experiences of going through it. So for me, that was the catalyst. So I have not forgotten that. I do talk about my own experience in different ways at different times. I've talked about my own shift many, many times and things that happened afterward, in the relative linear time world. But also I love to interview people who've had the shift themselves and have had deeper insights and deeper shifts and so forth, for the same exact reason. You never know who's going to resonate with another or a certain person, right? So age, gender, ethnicity, proclivities, vocation, like all those things really do resonate. Like, you may watch 10 people and go, oh, good for them. I believe it. I feel it. But it's, it doesn't really register as that could happen to me. And that 11th person, it like registers, right? So I like to interview different people, and many people have awakenings watching this stuff, coming to these retreats that I do. And I try to kind of keep them in the loop with the other viewers and showing like this does work. It does, work. You can wake up. And you get the sense of what it feels like, and that actually transmits. It's not adopting their story, right? That's not what works. That's not what transmits. What transmits is energetic, for sure. Yeah. So I will continue to keep that in mind. I will talk about it in story form at times, and I will interview people who've gone through it and so forth. Thank you for your comment. Next comment is from Swarananda. Casting light on the identity structure that hide through service. Boom. Precision pointing speaks directly to what I'm facing right now. I'm facing some intense isolation. It's not my preference, but I can see how the universe is cleaning out some sticky material before new relationships can form. There's some deep aloneness I've been avoiding, and now there's somewhere to run or hide. I'm sorry, there's nowhere to run or hide. Keep shining that light. So the first part I just want to address is that identity hiding through service. So this video is called I Feel a Lot of Disgust. That's the comment on that video. The thing about that identity, let's call it ego, identity, whatever, can hide behind being service-oriented. Sure, it can. It can hide behind being a monk, being a renunciate. It can hide behind being a physician. It can hide behind being a nurse. It can hide behind being a an altruistic parent. It can hide behind anything, like, in service. Not that service is bad or you should stop living a life of service, but really look into what you're deriving from it, how your ego is tied around it, whether there are ulterior motives, which there always are going to be. Seeing all that is really helpful if you want to continue to clarify what's initially glimpsed, right? And so sometimes I've said the ego, or we could say the self-structure, is the ultimate opportunist. It will identify with anything and everything, including no self, including a way of speaking about no self, including being a good person, including being a bad person, a victim, a warrior, a hard worker, a lover, a mother, a father, a son, a daughter, star-crossed lover, anything, right? The ego will identify with anything, and it often identifies with either what's prominently displayed in your personality or prominently expressing in your life, like through conditions and situations. So just be aware of that. I don't want to make people paranoid or like hyper vigilant and like overanalyzing themselves, but just notice and get to know the feeling of identifying, the feeling of selfing, the feeling of what you don't want to let go of, right? What don't you want to let go of? What identity don't you want to let go of, right? Many people can sense that quickly. Like, I don't want to let go of the identity of a parent. I'm afraid I'll stop being a good parent if I do that. There are many other examples, but that's one of them. That's very common. So that's one part of the question. And then the other thing about, there's a deep aloneness I've been avoiding. So this is very common in deeper realization for people, and just doing deep shadow work, facing the sense of aloneness. And I don't want to encourage people to replace it with a sense of togetherness, because often what happens is you find other people who want to do that, and then together you feel alone and isolated, but you act like you don't, right? Don't do that. Rather, if you use group settings, if you use relational work, circling therapy, all that, see that you're not going to be able to use that to get over the sense of loneliness, right? Rather, see what is the actual mechanism. What is the mechanism of the loneliness, right? And what you'll usually find, I can't tell this person what they're going to find, but I would recommend looking really closely at what's actually happening. What you often find is it's not loneliness that's the affliction. The affliction is the fear of loneliness. And the fear of loneliness is based on an illusion. And the illusion is separation. I really think that is the root of all of it, of all the whole loneliness thing. Because there is a place you can find yourself in life where it doesn't actually matter if you're totally alone with a giant group of people, with really good friends that you trust, with people who show you affection and truly love you, or just completely alone. It doesn't actually matter. You feel like you totally belong here. You feel totally at home, totally at ease, okay in your own skin, even if emotions come. But that profound sense of isolation, it is, I don't want to say constructed, it's fabricated. Not consciously and not on purpose. Who would do that, right? But it's fabricated by the deeply rooted fear of not having connection, fear of isolation, fear of abandonment. These are deeply rooted, very fundamental fears that are instilled in our thought process and then in our emotion body at a very young age. So the good news is that ultimately what is felt as isolation will be seen to have been a misperception at some point. Now, you can't bypass it, though. You have to go through it. You have to feel it. You have to feel everything involved in that. But look really closely at what is all happening. Not just like, oh, this feeling of isolation, it's so intense and it's just ongoing, and I can grind it out. I can feel it. It's okay. Sure. And what else is happening? Where did you get the label isolation? What do you perceive that means, right? What changes when there's a person in front of you and when there's not a person in front of you? What changes? Do they change? Do you change? Does the environment change? What are your beliefs, thoughts? What thoughts and beliefs come through your mind when you start to feel isolated? Or what situation and conditions trigger the sense of isolation? You may be surprised if you find out what triggers your sense of isolation is being around a certain person, not being alone, right? So my point is just keep looking, really inquire, look, feel, openness, vulnerability, group work if you resonate with that. All of that is important. Yeah, great question. This one is a question from Mund. Oh my gosh, it's really long. Monday Hunda Mala to, I don't know. It says, thanks a lot. It was also clear in meditation or in the field of sound and feeling, but even after watching all of your videos about the visual field, working with subject-object, I felt like a total Dumbo in this regard. The visual field is often much trickier than sound or sensation and consciousness. As for now, just the phrase, is there a difference between inner and outer world, while watching the rest of my breakfast made it. Good. It's really unbelievable how it could be so hidden with a laughy face. Thanks again for repeating it again and again. There's a lot of things that I repeat over and over, sometimes to people's annoyance. And I know that because they tell me. But most people don't say that. But there's a reason I say things over and over, certain things. Like what I'm talking about is non-conceptual. Like thoughts are not going to get you there. Like understanding Dharma is not going to get you there. These things bear repeating. Like you have to do the shadow work. Like especially when very subtle things like the visual field, is there an inside and an outside? And look into the visual experience to look for that answer to that, not into your thoughts. It takes a while before you even can actually tell the difference between a thought and a visual experience. It's laughable at some point, but for a while it's not. You actually are so identified and intertwined with thoughts that when I say just look there and just see what's there, you're already thinking. You're already thinking about what's there. You're thinking about what's there. It's not seeing it, right? Except for maybe just a very momentary flash. So it takes some time to even recognize the difference between a visual experience and a thought about a visual experience and where your attention is. Once you do, little by little, and it takes some repeating and it takes a little bit of effort and some repetition and curiosity and listening to me say the same thing over and over, all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, oh my God. It's like, yes, it's always been there. Here, this. There's never been boundaries. It's obvious. There's never been separation. But boy, was I lost in thought, right? And then it's just clear. It's obvious. It's not a problem anymore. And so you're welcome. This one's from Kadams. I have a question. How does your nervous system state relate to emotion? Resistance and painful emotions often come along with fight, flight, freeze. Okay. But it feels like this makes it harder to stay with the emotion. Is that just part of the practice, or is it better to recall painful emotions once you're a bit more regulated? That's a multi-part question. There's a lot to it. There's some question about mechanisms of doing shadow work and emotion work and so forth. But you're right in that we can get, when emotions occur, the emotion itself, regardless of circumstances, meaning like if you suddenly feel fear and there's nothing to fear in the immediate environment, like you're not being chased by a serial killer or a tiger, nothing's on fire, you're just sitting there, you're not having a heart attack or something, you just feel fear suddenly. That can happen, right? That will often set a fight or flight experience in motion, right? Now, in one sense, you could say fear itself is a kind of fight or flight thing. It's not the behaviors, but it goes hand in hand. It's the feeling of fight or flight, right? It's basically epinephrine is what it is. It's a chemical in your body. Increases heart rate, dilates your pupils, increases your attention into the visual field, makes your vision more acute, readies your muscles. You may feel some increased muscle like tension and readiness, makes you a little jumpy, hypervigilant. All those things are effects of a hormone in your body. And they often go hand in hand with the behaviors of fight, flight, freeze, fawn, right? But I would argue that when none of those are required in the moment, again, there's nothing actually to fear right here, but you're feeling a physical experience of fear, then you have the opportunity to purely feel the emotion of fear and not add anything to it. You don't have to flight, like run away. Another way of flighting is dissociating, or you could say freeze is also a kind of dissociation. They cross over. But ultimately, dissociation and severe dissociation is the freeze state. And then fawn is behavioral with another person, right? Essentially. So you have the opportunity to actually feel the sensation, the physical experience of fear, everything I just listed, and not react at all to it. You actually have that ability. Everyone does. But what you have to do is realize that the physical experience, sensation, and if you want to call it an emotion, fear associated with all of that, does not compel you to A, come to a conclusion, B, act on it. Act on it in any of those ways. You can do this. In fact, when we do Federer 4 and 5 reactivity work, even though the reactivity doesn't necessarily cause abject fear, it can, but it doesn't always. There's other types of reactivity. It does have that feeling of like, I got to do something. I need to do something here. We're really deconstructing that belief that you need to do something here. We're deconstructing the belief that you can't handle this. So with saying all that, what I want to say to this person is there is a connection that fight, flight, and freeze, it can be a triggered response from emotional experiences. I used fear as an example. It can happen with others too. Fear is the most typical, of course, but it's a conditioned response. Now, I'm not talking about if somebody's chasing you with a knife. Then your flight, or maybe fight, hopefully not fight, hopefully flight just gets you out of there. That is, I'm not going to say that's a conditioned response. That's an innate, natural response, and that's not what I'm talking about. But the conditioned response is really thought-based, actually. There's an interpretation that's linking, and this is, again, why we do 4 and 5 Federer work after awakening, and it's very subtle, and it's tricky stuff to do because it's a very quick jump between sensation, feeling, emotion, and behavior, including internal behavior, including dissociative behavior. The jump between those, the quote-unquote gap, is so small that you won't even know it's there. You can believe it's there and you still can't see it. You can't feel it. You can't experience it in real time at first. With practice, you will be able to, okay? And you will be able to completely unhook the fight, flight, and freeze and fawn from any triggering response, emotion, again, outside of any actual physical threat. You can unhook that. It's tricky, it's subtle, and it works best after awakening. You can do some of it before for sure, but to get to the really, really subtle stuff, it's hard when you're just constantly awash in thoughts and identified with thoughts. It's very tricky, but I won't say it can't be done. So that's what I want to say to that comment. Thank you for your comment. That was a good one. This one's from Michael. Michael says, Buddhist here. He's talking about the video. There's nothing as enjoyable as this. He says, Buddhist here. This is beautiful, poetic, and true. True beauty and poetry are synonymous with love, peace, joy, and harmony in my non-dual world. Beautiful. Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. Heart Sutra. You're awake, my wise friend. You are, as you said, free. Very happy for you. The wealth you speak of makes material wealth look extremely poor, does it not? I agree. I agree, but I'm a little cautious of how much I glorify realization because that has side effects. This is a teaching point. That has side effects. It really can put people in their heads like, oh God, that's the ultimate cookie, And in a sense it is, but it's also A, not what you think it's going to be by definition. B, it's not harder to go through than you think, but I'll say there's going to be more discomfort and challenge than you think there will be to get really through the whole thing to liberation, but you can do it. So those are two things. And then the third one is it can create this like bypassing thought process of like, almost like fantasizing about everything it's going to give you and seeking, like spiritual seeking at a mental level, right? Not at a instinctual dropping in, letting go, surrender level. So I am a little cautious about how much I don't know what the word would be, but decorate enlightenment, realization, or sell the benefits of it. I do, but I'm cautious with it. Anyway, I agree with you that it is, I wouldn't trade $1 trillion for it. Speaking of that, we have a lot of billionaires that are, I'm not the kind of person that walks around hating billionaires like they're some kind of second-class citizen or some weird sociopath. I don't see that. But I do see that we have a lot of billionaires out there now who are very much in the spotlight and showing their true colors in a lot of ways. And I'm fascinated by how emotionally stunted some of them are. Not all of them, but how emotionally stunted some of them are. I'm fascinated by it. And they're showing us, like, it's just like, oh my God, like children in grown bodies with jet speed minds and insanely hard, intense work ethics and all that. And it's not just billionaires, it's wealthy people of all kinds and high functioning people and everyone else. I wouldn't trade all that money for having to be mind identified. No way. I can see how much they're suffering, even if they don't look like they are. I can see it. I can see the reaction formation. I can see what's behind that. I know what's behind. I can feel what's behind the personas, And again, I'm not just picking on wealthy people. I just mean they specifically said, would you trade $1 trillion? And hell no. No way. I'd rather be dirt poor and awake, truly awake and liberated, than have endless amounts of money and be mind identified and emotionally unhealthy. For sure. I mean, right? The impetus to work that hard and to earn that much and to do that much is itself an outgrowth of dissatisfaction with your own experience, largely, right? Feeling of not good enough, not enough. Got to work hard to prove myself, prove that I'm enough, and I'm never enough, right? That's behind a lot of hardworking people. Not all, but a lot. And there's a mixed agendas and all that stuff too. But yeah, that's a no-brainer to me. Says $1 trillion in your bank, all the fame, success, etc. you could imagine, it begins to look quite poor in comparison. I agree. And for those who know, it all has no value. Well, that's true too. Happiness is not an external thing, nor is suffering. Bless you. Love to you and all beings. That's a very sweet message. Seems like a pretty clear human being there. This is from the video. There's nothing as enjoyable as this. The last question was as well. This one's from Cavallo Pazzo. Cavallo Pazzo. I love that name. It says, beautiful. I am realizing this more and more, but there's one stubborn doubt that keeps coming up. A particular family member who has a severe personality disorder and has made it their life mission to destroy me. Whew. Any help? Full pointer for this. I don't usually give personal advice too much. What should I do? Who should I date? Should I break up my marriage? I try to avoid all that kind of stuff, right? What should I do for work? But in this case, I can tell you reasonably straightforward advice from most psychologists, experts in personality disorders and so forth, that is, make as much distance as you possibly can from that person, minimize any contact in any possible way you can. Sometimes there are kids involved. Sometimes it's impossible to completely cut the person out of your life, but I would absolutely minimize communication and interaction. And when you do have to interact or communicate, be extremely neutral. Don't give any more than is needed. Exchange the information needed. Don't emotionalize anything. Don't show your cards. Don't be vulnerable around that person. James McCleary said a beautiful thing to me once. He said, vulnerability and openness is a beautiful thing. And it's a wonderful thing to share with people who you trust. Yeah, there are people that you shouldn't trust and you don't need to be vulnerable around them at all, right? So that kind of a thing. Doesn't mean you need to walk around walled up and guarded. It just means that you are skillful in who you trust, who you give information to, who you let be in your energy field. So again, in a case with a severe personality disorder that's outward trying to destroy you, zero contact if possible. And beyond that, minimize everything. That's my opinion. Okay. All right. I think that was it for now. Again, thanks for the thanks for the I'm reading this next comment. I'm like, what in the heck are they talking about? It says, love the block of salt with a waterproof veneer. It's from a Q&A from a long time ago. Anyway, so yeah, thanks again, and Happy New Year to everyone, even though you're watching this significantly after New Year's Day, but happy 2026.